There are multiple interfaces to the Windows Firewall on 2008 server. Taking a look at the 2008 Windows Firewall, there are two main interfaces. One is the Windows Firewall with Advanced Security. And this one we used before, and it combines a lot of things: monitoring, IDS, IPsec, inbound and outbound rules, state filtering. You can do a lot of things with this, and there's also another interface, a more simplified one. If you go to Control Panel and click on Windows Firewall, notice that this is sort of a more simplified interface here. And let's say I just wanted to allow one single program through the firewall. I could choose this option, and these are the things, the allowances I'm already making here. But if I wanted to add a program, I could choose any one of these here, say Windows Contacts or Internet Explorer. And then if I were going to do that, I'll go ahead and say OK. And if I go back there, notice here are my exceptions. And I could uncheck it if I didn't want to allow access. But these are things, items that I'm actually going to allow through the firewall. And let's go and let's say I wanted to allow a specific port like FTP. I could do that. Or let's say that I wanted to allow something else. Let's say or better yet, secure shell. Okay, so I could add those exceptions in either by port or by program name. Let's use the Restore Defaults feature to reset the firewall back to its initial state. Remember that previously we had configured a rule to allow ICMP traffic or pings and echo replies through our firewall. So if I go to inbound rules, here's the the rule that we configured. It was a new inbound rule, and basically we're just allowing ICMP version 4 traffic. If I look at protocols and ports here, it was ICMP version 4. And I could manually delete this, but let's look at another feature of the Windows Firewall. So if I didn't want to manually delete it, I can go here to Control Panel and Windows Firewall, and I can go over here. I can click on Change Settings. I can go to Advanced, and I can select Restore Defaults. I'm going to click Yes to restore my firewall to its default settings. And there's no IPsec policies applied here. They've all been removed and unassigned. So right now it's just the default firewall settings, which, remember, by default it will block echo replies on ICMP version 4 traffic. And let's see how that looks here. If I go to the administrative tool and I select inbound rules, notice that my my ping IP version 4, or excuse me, ICMP version 4 rule is no longer there. Okay, so ping is gone. And I just want to do the same thing on the Galactica, so you can kind of start with a clean slate. To the Pegasus. Now I'm on Pegasus, and I want to do the same thing. Again, if I go to Administrative Tools, and I look at my Windows Firewall, here's a rule I added for ping, the ping command using ICMP version 4 traffic. And if I open it up, and I were to look at protocols and ports, it's allowing those echo replies and ICMP version 4 traffic through. I could manually delete it, but to illustrate the default settings feature, I'm going to go to Control Panel, Windows Firewall. I'm going to go to Change Settings. I want to go to the Advanced tab and then Restore Defaults and select Yes. Okay, and then OK, and OK, and OK. And once again, now if I were to go back, we'll see that inbound connection rule is no longer there. Right, ping is gone. When working with the Windows Firewall and controlling network traffic, it is important to know if you are configured as private, public, home, or work, and network and sharing center. These settings control aspects of your Windows firewall and block or allow ports and protocols, as well as enable and disable network discovery and file sharing. Let's look at several key aspects of the Windows firewall. And the first thing I'm going to do is go to Network Places here, and Network and Sharing Center. And notice that I can switch back and forth here between network types. There's public and private. If you click on Customize over here, and there are default settings, and you can change them. And I've actually kind of modified mine some, but by default, when you select public, that's a more secure connection. And it blocks several things, such as easy access to file sharing and the discovery of computers in the network. And the reason is that makes it a bit safer for your computer if you're going to go on a public or untrusted network. However, if you select private, that allows a lot more network discovery, and it's more easy to find files and discover things and the like. So let's take a look at some of the settings configured with both of these. I just click cancel, but for a public network, people that I don't trust as much, I have network discovery turned off. So that affects things like ICMP, ping, or network analysis tools, things I might use. I might need to turn network discovery on if I were going to do things like that, ping or use those network analysis tools. File sharing's turned off, public folder sharing. Don't really use public folder sharing on these servers, but if I did, it would be turned off. Printer sharing, and then the only thing I'm enabling is password protected sharing here. Okay, so those are my public settings on the public network, because we don't trust the public as much as we do the private. Now what if I select private? I'm going to go here and I'm going to check private and next. And of course, you can modify these settings, but if I select private, notice I have network discovery turned on, and I have file sharing turned off, and public folder sharing turned off, and printer sharing off, and password protected sharing on. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and turn on the private network. Since I trust, I'm going to turn on file sharing. Okay, and I'll apply. And so I have password protected sharing, and I also have file sharing enabled here. That's only on a private network, a network that I trust more than a public network that I'm not sure about. So looking at those settings, let's see what we can do. Let's try to ping. I'm going to go ahead and open up a command prompt, and my IP is 192.168.13.19. I'm going to try to ping the Pegasus, which is 199.20.13.16. Okay. Notice that with this set on a public network, it limits my network discovery, so I can't ping. It's blocking some of my CMP traffic there. And Pegasus is set up the same way. Depends on whether or not it's set up on a public or a private network, and whether or not it limits network discovery traffic. Okay. So we looked at that, and now let's look at creating a share. And there are several ways that you can create a share. I'm going to go here and I'm going to make a folder called Banana. We'll call it Banana. And I'm going to right click on it. I'm going to select Properties. And I like to disable the simple file sharing wizard. But I mean, you can do both. And that depends. I'll go over here real quick and show you where that is. If I go to Folder Options and View, you can either select to use the sharing wizard, or you can uncheck it. And I usually uncheck it, but I'll check it just to show you the difference. If I were to do that and I were to share a Banana with a simple file share, notice this is how it looks. This is what I get. I can add everyone. I have default groups and things, and I can share a folder accordingly that way. And if I do, it'll run the wizard, and it'll try to basically share it out, and it'll give me the option of selecting the public or the private network interface. And I can also do advanced sharing, which means that I can go in and remember it's the combination of the share permissions and the local, so I could also add user accounts this way as aces on the DACL. And then I could also go to the security tab and add my users. And that gives me a more fine-tuning, finer control over sharing than I would get just using the wizard. However, if you like easy, the wizard takes the headache out of it by attempting to manage incompatible permissions between the local and the share permissions that combine. But I usually leave that option unchecked, so I just click apply and click OK. Either way, so if I were going to share this out this way, now it's disabled, and and the wizard added it for me, but there'd be the everyone group, and cancel, and over here would be the everyone group. Just showing you what that looks like, okay? And I'm going to go here and type in the UNC path and Galactica. And if I do, notice that their banana shows up. However, remember my settings. Again, if I go to Network and Sharing Center, notice what I have set up here. And for a private network, everything is, okay, I have network discovery and file sharing, and alright, so I should be able to, to get that folder. So we're going to hop on over to the Pegasus and try to get that, load that folder. And then, so we're on the Pegasus now, and again, I had selected private network, so it's a more trusted network on the Galactica. And I have to go over here, and I have to make sure my settings are compatible. So, here this is a public network. It's not as trusted. So I'm going to customize that. I'm going to select private. Alright, now it's a private. Now it's more trusted. Network discovery is turned on, file sharing, and so forth. And with that setting as it is, let's see what we can do. Okay. I'm going to access Galactica. And there's the share. There's the shared folder banana from Pegasus. Now, let's also try getting some ICMP traffic. So I'll try pinging. And I am 199.207.13.16, so I'm going to ping 199.207.13.19, which is Galactic. And then if I get echo replies, I can ping. Okay, and let's hop on over to Galactica, and this time we're going to switch from a private network to a less trusted public network, which limits network discovery, and we'll see what happens. Amen. Okay, I'm going to go to Network and Sharing Center. And yes, again, notice you can customize any of these. You don't have to stick with the defaults. But just showing you there are several different layers in the security that can affect everything from ping and ICMP to file sharing. And you have to kind of navigate between all of these different layers in a 2008 server. So I'm going to click Customize, and this time I'm going to select Public, a less trusted network. And notice in this example, these settings are different. So network discovery is turned off, file sharing is off, and so forth. And I'm going to go ahead and select that as public. I'm going to go to Pegasus and do the same thing. And then, so now I'm on the Pegasus, and I'm going to go to Pegasus, and I want to go to Network and Sharing Center. And again, notice I have network discovery, file sharing turned on, but were I to change this or modify this to a less trusted public network, now network discovery, file sharing, all of these things are turned off. And so, with that being set the way it is, now let's see what happens. Can I ping 199.207.13.19, which is the IP address of Galactica? And the answer is no. It's blocking, network discovery and ICMP traffic. Okay, what about accessing a file share? Can I do that? Remember, before I could do this. I could go to Galactica and I could access the banana file share. Now let's try to do it and see what happens. Notice it says Windows cannot access Galactica. And I could try to run the wizard to diagnose it, but we know what's wrong. We configured, we sabotaged it. We did it on purpose. We set the settings wrong. So just to kind of illustrate that layer of security with the Windows Firewall, and that you access that actually from Network and Sharing Center. Okay, and I could I could bring it back up. I could allow ping and I could allow the file sharing if I, again, were to switch both of them over to private on more trusted network instead of less trusted. Or I could manually modify each one of these settings if I wanted to. And another thing I could do is I could also add a rule for network and file sharing, a connection rule to the Windows Firewall. So an easy way to bring them back would be simply to set both of these back to private or to manually modify these. Good grief. The problem is choice overload in Windows because there's just so many different ways to do the same thing. So let's look at yet another different way to do this, and this time we'll configure some traffic connection rules in the firewall. So although we could bring it back, we're going to leave it public. So remember that because of the way we set it up, it's not pinging and it's not connecting via file shares. Again, if I try to select a file share, it's going to tell me that it can't. And if I try to ping, it's going to tell me that it can't. Okay. So many different ways to do the same thing. Which options? Which way do we choose? Which way do we choose? So rather than switching it back to private, which would fix it, let's look at configuring the firewall. Let's look at the standard Windows Firewall applet and control panel. Let's look at another way of kind of doing the same thing or configuring the firewall. So first we were doing, using network and sharing center, and we can change network discovery and file sharing in our firewall settings that way. Now let's look at the firewall applet and control panel. So if I click on Windows Firewall, I can go to change settings, and this is sort of a simple configuration, but I can go to the exceptions tab and I can select file and printer sharing, and I'm going to add a program this time. And I'm going to browse and I'm going to find ping. I'm going to add the ping program, and I want to allow both of these, so I'm allowing file sharing and allowing ping. I'm going to click OK, and let's go do the same thing on the Galactica. So now we're on the Galactica, and I'm going to go to Control Panel and access the Windows Firewall applet. I'm going to click on Change Settings, and let's pull this over here, go to the Exceptions tab. I'm going to select File and Printer Sharing, and I'm going to add a program. I'm going to click Browse. I'm going to go look for the ping command. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and add that, and click OK, and make sure it's selected, and click OK. Okay. So now, even though our network settings are set to a public network, and normally they would be blocking ping and they would be blocking file sharing like I demonstrated before, because I modified the firewall settings a different way. Oops, let's slide that back over there. Let's see what happens. So here's our ICMP traffic. We are 19, and let's ping 16. Okay, and so now it allows us through. And now let's hop on over to the Pegasus and see if we can't get our file share. And then? So now we're on the Pegasus, and I'm going to bring up Galactica. And notice there's our banana file share, so we can get there. And now I'm just going to set everything back. I'm going to go here, change settings, exceptions. I'm going to untick ping and delete it, and untick file sharing, that was the default. Alternatively, I could have also just gone here to advanced and said restore defaults. Matter of fact, to give you another way, like I said, there's just choice overload. There's so many different ways to do things. I'll do it that way on Galactica. And then, so I'm going to go here and Control Panel and Windows Firewall and change settings. And now I'm going to go to exceptions, and I'm going to untick ping and delete it. And oh wait, we said we were going to use the default settings, didn't we? Oops. Alright, so let me do restore defaults. And if I do that, notice that file and printer sharing are no longer checked. So it's back to the Windows defaults. That being the case, because of our network settings and the network and sharing, being on an untrusted public network as opposed to a trusted private. Now we're back to no ICMP, no ping, and no sharing. So let's test that. And then recurse, and we are 16, and let's try to ping 199.207.13.19. Notice we can't. And let's try to access a share. Alright, we'll try to access a share this time. It'll take a minute or so to time out. But okay, and again, we cannot connect. And there's yet another way to do this. We can use the advanced security, Windows Firewall tool. So we'll do that next.